Hello, I'm Miss Jackie, and this is Word for Brothers, where we lift up our men where they belong, the head and not the tail, and primarily as head of household. If you like, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. Now, sometimes in life we accept roles we didn't audition for, out of convenience, money, desperation, programming, or a toxic mix of all. But if you play a part for too long, you'll forget who you are, and it usually doesn't end well. Which brings us to Goliath. He is forever enshrined as the OG of big bad enemies or obstacles that must be defeated and overcome in order to win. Goliath's name means splendor, and for one brief and shining moment he was. Though he lives and dies in just one chapter, 1 Samuel 17, there's more to his story. He is introduced as a Philistine champion. He brags to Israel's shaky boots army, 1 Samuel 17:8, "Am I not a Philistine?" Well, that's what Goliath believed, but it wasn't the truth. Goliath, probably not his ancestral name, came from an ethnic group of giants, his being the Anakites. The Anakites, whose origins some say come out of Genesis 6:4, the Nephilim, were known as heroes of old and men of renown. They lived in Israel before it was Israel, and while Israel was on its way to becoming Israel, Goliath's Anakite ancestors never bothered them nor said a word to them. You never read of them threatening or fighting with the Israelites. For the most part, the Anakites just moved along, minding their business, being the heroes of old and men of renown. However, their mere presence intimidated the Israelites, who spent so much time focusing on them, they couldn't focus and listen to God. In Numbers 13, when Moses sent out leaders of each tribe to spy out the promised land, they returned with a report of shock and awe, not of the beauty of the land, its fertile soil, yielding an abundance of non-GMO produce, but of the Anakites. We know Israel's attention deficit of God's word turned an 11-day journey into 40 years. We hear no more about the Anakites until the time of Joshua, whose mission was to get the Israelites in and everyone else, giants included, out. And since Joshua walked by faith and not by sight, Joshua 11 verses 21 through 22, King James Version says, "At that time came Joshua and cut off the Anakims from the mountains, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from all the mountains of Judah, and from all the mountains of Israel. Joshua destroyed them utterly with their cities. There was none of the Anakims left in the land of the children of Israel. Only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod they remained." Why God allowed some of the Anakites to live to see another day, who knows? But these people, these heroes of old, men of renown, headed west, the place where the sun sets. But at this time, the west also referred to the sea, namely the Mediterranean, which brings us to Goliath's soon-to-be employers, the Philistines. Now, the Philistines were cousins of the Egyptians, who called them the Sea Peoples. They were extremely aggressive. They repeatedly attacked the Egyptians, but without success, until they just finally gave up and left. Note, there are some family members you simply can't get along with. Now, eventually, they took their warmongering selves and formed 5 city-states. One was Gath, located on a crescent-shaped hill. At this time, it was the largest of the Philistine cities. So over a period between 300 to 400 years, some of Goliath's people settled in a place similar to the hill country they had been run out of. These giants had found a new home. Now, while the Philistines couldn't defeat the Egyptians, they terrorized the Israelites, which was easy to do since they controlled the weapons industry backed by the government and a powerful gun lobby. It was the constant war and rumors of war, not old Samuel and his no-good sons, that was the real reason the Israelites wanted a king to lead the fight against the Philistines. Now, though the Philistines were tall, they were not giants. So the question isn't how the Anakites survived over the centuries, but why did the Philistines let them? And how come these giants wound up serving instead of overpowering them? There are two universal answers. When the Hebrews weren't dying, but instead multiplying, Pharaoh said to his people that we must deal shrewdly with them. And in Judges, when the Philistine rulers, through their spies, peeped Samson's weakness for sex and instant gratification. When people need to use you, they must find your weakness and exploit it and shrewdly manipulate you to think you're in the driver's seat while handing you a map that will eventually lead you over a cliff. Now, fun fact, Philistine archaeological sites have been found to have had an astounding number of breweries, making them, along with war, masters of intoxication. Over time, the Anakites allowed themselves to be used as special ops soldiers. But why? There could have been the usual discriminatory suspects, lack of access to capital, quality education, redlining, etc. Locked out of certain industries, maybe they came to view enlisting as an opportunity to gain rights and finally be accepted as Philistines. Whatever it was, the Philistines were only too happy to play on that need, along with the Anakites' ancestral bitter memories and dreams of retribution on the Israelites, passed down from generation to generation, using the Anakite lost cause to their advantage. See, they came here defeated, they said. We'll treat them as champions as long as they fight and win for us. We'll make them drunk with the wine of the world. These heroes of old and men of renown who are really our $40 million slaves. Fast forward to that fateful day, here comes Goliath, basking in rented glory as the clock begins to wind down on his 15 minutes of fame. 1 Samuel 17:4-7 shows the Philistines sparing no expense to assure their victory. Although it was more economical to make weaponry and protective gear out of iron, here is Goliath decked out in bronze, the best their military industrial complex could offer. Now, one of the telling scenes in Goliath's narrative is in 1 Samuel 33 and 42, when Goliath sees in David what he is no longer, young. Perhaps he's feeling the first twinges of aging. No matter how much armor padding you wear, there's always a chink, which results in numerous cuts, bruises, along with hits and falls in the knees. Oh my God, the knees. He's standing there with the weight of Philistine glory on his shoulders. But in the back of his mind, there's the knowledge that there's always a faster gun in the West or anywhere else, another champion to take his place, another hero of old, another man of renown. However, with his boys cheering him on, Goliath brushes those thoughts aside. I'll kill this little dude and soon retire with a big fat military pension. Full of the Kool-Aid, Goliath thinks again, am I not a Philistine, before a rock slams into his head. As his brain slosh around, as his body with all the armor begins to reel, legs buckling, Goliath can't believe it. A few brain cells dimly flicker before going dark. Am I not a Philistine? As his eyes close for good, Goliath doesn't see any of his fellow Philistine soldiers. They had run, leaving him, whose people came from the heights, heroes of old, men of renown, face down in a valley. Truth, it wasn't what hit Goliath's head, but what was in his head when he was hit. His death certificate must be changed to death by mistaken identity. And with that said, let us uplift and praise our men who wish they would let anyone tell them who they are. They know it and show it, clothed in the spirit, knowing their most important fight is for the future of their sons and daughters, by teaching them without a shadow of a doubt who and whose they are. See you next time.